Everybody. So I'm Suzanne Young. I'm the CEO for both the Honolulu Board of Realtors and High Central MLS, your MLS service. We have Courtney Hanna joining us. Courtney is taking the place of Jen Sakamoto. For those of you who may attend regional meetings or some previous outreach, Jen Sakamoto was the client success manager. And so Courtney Hanna, we just hired her, and she's done commercial property management. So she's a little bit familiar with real estate, but not exactly MLS and whatnot. So she's in training, but she's going to help me with the PowerPoint. So let's get started. And Courtney, you can go ahead and start sharing the PowerPoint. What I'll do is...
Suzanne, sorry, let me just say to everybody on the call, if you would please mute your microphone unless you have anything that you'd like to add. So just hit that little mute button down below.
Okay. Yeah, and then if you want to save your questions for the end, just jot down the question that you had, and then we'll have plenty of time to take care of your questions. So Courtney, are you able to share? There we go. Okay, so this is your rules and regulations changes. I'm going to kind of walk through here quickly. So slide number 2, our overriding mission, if you will, this MLS service is yours. It's your data. MLS exists to help collect it, compile it, and then share it. And we are always trying to ensure that the data is accurate, timely, and complete. And that's where the rules come in. Rules are usually needed to help make sure we're holding people accountable to the accuracy, the timeliness of their data, and that sort of thing. So that's kind of what we are overriding. Your next slide, 2022 High Central MLS Board of Directors. Next. So these rules... Oh, I'm sorry, this is a 2023. This is fine. So this is the current leadership for High Central MLS. So Chuck Garrett is president. Kathy Matthews is vice president. Kathy is with a small brokerage firm, and she primarily works in property management. But this is your existing 2023 board of directors. Your rules were voted on last year and approved, but took effect this year. And if we can go to the next slide, you can see 2022, and then next slide is our task force. So here's the folks that were responsible for working on the rules. So they spent many hours, and you'll see Patrick was involved. We appreciated Patrick. Yay! You know, the rules don't work if we're not creating them based on how real practitioners use them. So it was really important for us to make sure that we compiled a very diverse group of realtors, brokers, principal brokers, to make sure that these rules that were changed were meaningful to all of you. And so it's all realtors who really spent a lot of time. I know, Patrick, you attended most of those meetings and put a lot of time and effort into it. And we hope that we've created a group of rule changes that make sense for you. So let's get into it. One of the primary goals of the task force, besides the accuracy and all of that, is you're going to hear this throughout the year of 2023, is protecting the Realtor brand. What that means is the Realtor represents professionalism. Overall, everything, it's professionalism. It means that you abide by a code of ethics. It means we have an accountability system to ensure that you are always working in the best interest of your clients. You're being truthful and honest and all of these things. In essence, it's transparency to the public. That is what you get when you work with a realtor and our realtors who subscribe through the multiple listing service. So the first change that we had, and this was based on input from members and what we're seeing around the country, Courtney, you can go to the next slide, is the ability to search for a secondary dwelling. So ADUs are growing pretty quickly across the country. And for most around the country talk about the ADU, the accessory dwelling unit. That's a common terminology that's being used. And so if you're looking for more information on an ADU, just so you can see there at the bottom, honolulu.gov/DPP. If you go there to that site, there's a series of frequently asked questions. And in those questions, they have a good amount of information on ADUs. So let's go to the next slide. So here's what's now in your MLS system. Under the tab for additional information, you have the option for secondary dwelling to pick none, an ADU, or an Ohana dwelling. If you pick the ADU or the Ohana, you're going to be required to put the permit number and the completion date, because we want to make sure that the information that it's a legal ADU or legal Ohana unit. And so you have to be able to put in the completion date. What I'll tell you in the presentations that we've been giving, we were at the Leeward Regional, and I think it's Ho'opili, they have the ADUs, but they have the permit, but they don't yet have a completion date. So we're working through that on a special case-by-case basis with them. So it can be entered into MLS with the permit number. And then we're working on what that completion date looks like, because it's not quite yet completed. What this enables you to do, though, now is to be able to search by secondary dwelling. So if a client was interested in buying a property with a secondary dwelling, you can actually search on that. Okay, next.
Suzanne, might I add real quick on that slide?
Yeah.
If we go back to these. So for everyone on the call, you've seen right now, someone will say in the comments, oh, this is an ADU approved, or this has a secondary dwelling, but many times they are not permitted and they are not approved. Part of this was to take it one step up to prompt everybody to make sure you go back and really find those numbers and verify that it is.
Yeah. And so where you can find that information is through DPP. So if you go to the honolulu.gov site, you should be able to obtain information on the permits. Okay. All right. So again, it goes to making sure, as Patrick just said, that we're working as professional realtors and we're dealing with accurate legal units. Okay. And that always goes to the Articles 1 and 2. So Article 1 is acting in the best interest of your clients, and Article 2 is disclosure, right? Making sure that you're disclosing good information. Okay, our next change has to do with media in the MLS. So Patrick, I'm so glad you're on here, because you can add a little bit about what went on in the task force discussion, because I wasn't a part of that. But we want to make sure, and this all goes to fair housing and not having people feel like a particular property is biased against them, or they feel like maybe this isn't a property for them because of something that might be depicted in the picture. So on the left-hand side, the people that are in there are unrecognizable. On the right-hand side, that is definitely recognizable, and it could be deemed a steering issue or making it appear that this particular property is geared only for a certain type of person. And so it's important that we're trying to help you avoid Hawaii civil rights or a fair housing violation that might happen. Next slide, Courtney. Okay, so we are recommending also, and it's a recommendation, so you're not going to be fined for this, but we're strongly encouraging, you have to have one photo. This change is recommending that you have at least 5 photos. When we talk about being professionals, you look at the statistics there, your people that are out there looking for homes want to see photos. And so you're serving your client, your seller client, by making sure that you have at least 5 photos, because you're going to get better exposure for them. and making sure that your buyers have access to view properties with at least 5 photos.
Suzanne, let me add to that as well. It
Please.
was either Zillow or Trulia did a study recently to see when people go on these sites and they search, what do they search? What do they sort by? And the number one sort was number of photos. So when we put our listings in, make sure that we max out those 25 that are allowed.
Yeah. Perfect. Okay, so this is the big one, and it has to do with privacy. So a seller wants to expose their listing in every way possible. So they submit what we just talked about, as many photos as possible from every angle in the home and view and everything. But when a new buyer moves in, they're not keen on having every possible access to their home being up on the internet. And that's understandable. And so what some agents have been doing to protect buyer clients is trying to go in and delete photos from the MLS prior to reporting it as sold. And that's not helpful to all of you. It's not helpful to our appraisers who participate in the MLS system. And so the task force, rightly so, identified that on the IDX feed. So an IDX website is a brokerage's public search site. When a listing changes to sold status, that the IDX website can only display the primary photo. And that's why, again, when we talk about your primary photo should be an external shot, it's because also when the property sells, that's going to be the one and only photo that's going to be able to be displayed on a brokerage's public search site, which is the IDX website. I will say that this was implemented in January. We reached out to all of the vendors who work with our agents on creating these IDX websites, and we've had very good cooperation from them to change their programming such that a sold property on their site will only show the primary photo. Now, we're not 100%. We know that there's a few sites that are still displaying all photos for a sold property. And so we're working one-on-one now with those vendors and with those brokerage sites. If you see that, if you happen to come across a website that is showing all photos, not just the one primary, please report it to us. Please let us know so that we can do the follow-up as well. Okay, next page. We also have the enhanced photo watermark. So then this again is going to that theme of transparency to the public, making sure that it's clear when a photo is actually using virtual staging or something of that sort. So it's a new process, and it's, as I said, the goal is to ensure transparency to the public and folks that are looking at it, that photo is staged. So let's go to the next one. So the step one is when you're uploading a photo, in the description, you have to use the word enhanced. So with a CED, enhanced photo. So in your description, and it's for each individual photo that is enhanced, if you just make sure that that word is in there, and then you'll see on the photo on the right-hand side, where it says enhanced photo. So there's 2 watermarks now. One is the High Central MLS, which shows the source of the list of the photo, which comes from the High Central MLS. So as these photos get uploaded to various different sites, we can be sure that it's a High Central MLS photo. And then it's also going to have that tag of enhanced photo. Okay.
And Suzanne, may I add on the enhanced photos, we're all familiar with virtual staging. I know almost everybody has used that. The other categories that would fall under this are landscaping. A lot of people are doing landscaping coming in, or even a empty room where the carpet looks white and the walls look white, but it's all enhanced. So just to make sure any sort of enhancement, just to be safe, that you submit it properly.
Yeah. Excellent. So all of these changes that we're doing with the photo, it has to do primarily with fair housing, issues of unintended bias, making sure we have complete and accurate information in the MLS, protecting your client's privacy. I'll just reiterate for your code of ethics. So Article 1 is client's best interest. Article 10 is the discrimination, fair housing, making sure that you're treating all clients and the public equally. And then 12 is your fair representations in your advertising and your statements. So those are those 3 articles that we cover by making sure that we are professional in this way. Okay, next slide. Okay, so another one going along with that same theme is, I think in recent years, we've all been made aware that master may have connotations to it that could be perceived negatively. And so there's this transition to using the word primary. Again, one of the questions that have come up as we do these presentations is there may be multiple master bedrooms with a master bath mixed in with it. So how do you phrase that? I think there's different ways of doing it. I would defer to Patrick, your principal broker. How do you guys think you can capture the essence? Is it ensuite, or what are some of the other terminologies, Patrick, that might be used?
Yeah, so
multiple?
right. So just how we would do before, master 1, master 2. Now it would just be primary 1, primary 2.
Oh, okay. Excellent. Yeah. Okay, so wrapping up this whole conversation is just a reminder that NAR has an excellent fair housing course. It's a simulation. So it's called Fairhaven.Realtor. Encourage all of you to take it. It's eye-opening. It deals with this unintended, implicit bias where you think that I don't discriminate. I'm a very fair person. I've walked through the scenarios that they have, and they create pathways. They give you a scenario, and then they suggest to you, you want to go this route or this route. So some of it is, do you want to speak up and let your client know after you've seen an engagement that they were involved in? Do you want to say something, or are you not going to say something? And so depending on which path, it shows you in the end how that client or prospective client may have felt, and then what actions they might have taken. And it lets you rewind and go, oh, maybe I should have taken this path. Very eye-opening, takes an hour. Encourage everybody to highly just log into Fairhaven.Realtor. You'll need to use your NAR login code, but it's a good course, good reminder. Okay. Alrighty, so again, that's Article 10 is the fair representation for all your clients. And that also means among brokers. Sometimes we forget, but sometimes people, another broker might feel that they're being treated differently by brokers. So it's not just your clients, it's broker to broker interactions. Okay, next slide. Okay, so we're going to talk briefly about this. The days on market and the cumulative days on market, the Rules Task Force had created some changes to deal with refreshing or relisting of properties and trying to give an accurate picture. In reviewing the programming that was needed with our vendor, and then, you know, talking about transparency to the public and on websites, we realized that there's actually no requirement on a website to display days on market or cumulative days on market. We realized that some websites will show days on site. So if it's Zillow, it says days on Zillow. There's a whole range of how people are dealing with that. So we, the Rules Task Force just re-met and decided that this is not the change they had hoped for, was actually not going to create the change. We already have CDOM, which lets you know the cumulative time that a property has been on the market. That's available to realtors to see, so you can advise your clients on that. And we're also going to be just doing some better education on the days on market, on the CDOM, and if an agent chooses or their client wants you to relist the property, we'll do some education on how to do that in a way that's responsible. Patrick, did you
Suzanne?
want to add? Yeah, go ahead.
So as of right now today, and I just learned this last week, if a property is off the market for a day and relisted, days on market will reset to 0. Is that correct, Suzanne, right now?
That's correct. CDOM will continue, but the days on
CDOM.
market will reset to 0.
Right, and then right now, as it stands, CDOM will reset when the property is off the market for, is it 30 days?
60.
60 days, okay.
60 days, 60 days, or if it sells. And then the one that I had to check on was if the listing changes brokerages, does it reset? I know that the with the DOM it would reset. I'm not 100% sure on the brokerage firm. I think CDOM might continue even if you have a brokerage change.
Thank you. So to reset, right now it's 1 day to reset days on market. To reset CDOM is 60 days off the market.
Yeah.
And that probably will change coming up.
Okay. All right. All right. So now hopefully you've all been made aware of the listing status changes. So let's take a look at that slide. So, okay. So background on this. So RESO, Real Estate Standards Organization, there's like 600 MLSs across the country. There are a number of tools that are out there that have to work with multiple MLSs, and we may all use different references to certain fields. So the RESO organization was created to create some standards in data. And in doing so, one of the changes that came out for us is how we reflect our statuses. So let's go to the next. So where we had previously called it in escrow showing and then in escrow not showing, that was a way to make the public aware that a particular property is under contract, it's in escrow. Client, the seller, is either continuing to show the property for backup offers or they're not interested in showing it. We're trying to be consistent with the language that's used across the country. And so active under contract, listing is under contract and it is available for showing. Pending would be if it's under contract and it's not available for showing. Okay. No change to expired. And then also just to tighten up what it means to be temporarily withdrawn or withdrawn, those are going to be called hold and canceled. So the big difference is if it's on hold, it means the seller and the listing agent are still under contract for representation together, but it's temporarily off the market. So that means don't go solicit that particular listing, or you could reach an ethics violation. If it's canceled, that means that the seller and the listing brokerage are no longer under contract together. That listing is one that you could go out and see if the seller is interested in working with you, and that would not be a violation of the Code of Ethics and the agency representation. I think we have one more slide just to show you the status. So again, if you're showing it, it's active under contract. If you're not showing it, that's pending. And then the next slide, just a reminder, there is a standard of practice under Article 3, which says that realtors cannot misrepresent the availability of access to show or inspect a property. In the discussions, at least at the board of directors level, there was concern that some agents may leave a listing in active, claiming to be able to show it because they want it out there because they want to attract more buyer clients. In doing so, they are misrepresenting the availability of access to show, because the seller is not interested in showing the property or taking backup offers. So that, if that were the case, it has to be in pending. Patrick, did you have any comments on that one?
No, thank you.
Okay. All right. So again, Article 16 gives you a little bit more clarity on when can I approach a client or someone else's client to take on or offer my services. It's if it is canceled. Okay. Next slide. Okay, so the exempted listing process is an exempted listing. We can go to the next slide. So an exempted listing means it's exempted from the MLS. The seller has chosen that they do not want to have it on the MLS and they want to have it only marketed within their brokerage firm. The current or the previous process was that all documentation had to be submitted and entered in by MLS. The new process gives the power to the brokerage firm. If you happen to have that situation, you're still going to need to enter it within 4 calendar days of the listing contract. But the brokerage firm can go ahead and enter all of that information in. And then once it's sold, it now makes that property information available to all MLS users. So we can go to the next slide. So there's 2 options for an exempted listing. One is that the seller only wants their listing agent and their principal broker and their assistant to be aware, and that access for visibility is restricted just to the listing agent, the principal broker, and the assistant. The brokerage only on the right side is that the listing it's restricted to everyone within the brokerage firm, but not outside to all the other subscribers in the MLS. That's the distinction there. And then next slide. So there's now a new tab at the very end there that says exempted listing. So if you happen to have that, you would go to that tab, you would select exempted listing yes, you'd identify which type. Is it for the entire brokerage, or no visibility means it's just for me, the listing agent? Confirming that the seller has consented, the seller understands that it's not being exposed to the entire subscription base of the MLS. And HBR does have an exempted listing acknowledgement form. So that's the form that your seller would sign, acknowledging that they're aware and that is what they want, is to have it, the access restricted, the visibility restricted. Any comments, Patrick? Do you guys do exempted listings?
Yeah, so this is always very confusing, but hopefully I will describe this correctly. Sometimes we take a listing and the listing date begins January 1st. And in there it says, do not insert into MLS till January 14th. And that could be, you want the photos or whatever the seller is doing to clean it up. That would not be an exempted listing. That would be an incoming listing. Correct, Suzanne?
Yeah. And
Okay.
also you could do it coming soon, because so coming soon does not get sent to all the websites. The coming soon is just for all of you who subscribe to MLS.
Right. And exempted, yes, we've done several of those, and we all know the reasons why. Sometimes sellers just don't want anyone to know that they're selling the property. Not a good idea to market it, but that's just what it is. So we have done those in the past. It's good. I like that the system now will be more automated. But if you come up to these moments in time, just call me and we'll walk through it and figure out which one it is.
Yeah, don't do anything without checking with Patrick first, because then he can guide you through it and make sure you're selecting the right way to enter the listing. Yeah. Okay. So again, these are the questions that come along with when you put the listing in and how you want it visible and whatnot. Okay.
Suzanne, could we back up to that slide for just a moment?
Sure.
I don't know if this other, okay. The one at the bottom, allow websites to display their automated value for this listing. I would generally say don't select that to our agents. If you do select it, go in and see what the value is, because sometimes it's much less than your listing price. So make sure that you check that. If you're not sure, just start off and say no.
Yeah, and then also, what about the one above that? So allowing websites to give their users the ability to comment on your listing?
I think all comments say no. Oh, Lee Win, can you mute your microphone, please? Maybe she doesn't hear.
Yes.
Oh, please unmute. Oh, there you go. Okay. Yeah, I don't know how everybody else feels about this, but on a lot of the things we post, we just say no comments allowed. Suzanne, do you have guidance that you generally suggest?
I mean, I think that gives you more control over how all of these other sites are. You certainly want the listing exposed on the site for people to see it. You achieve that by saying yes to the first two, but the bottom two gives you your own listing agent a little bit more control over what people are doing with your listing or saying about your listing. And then that second question, the address, every once in a while, you might get somebody who doesn't want their address displayed publicly on sites. That's where you would say that. So on your profile sheet, there's that box that says, do you want to allow the address to be displayed? Yes or no? That's where it comes into when you answer that question.
And I'll just add one more thing. If we say yes to the first box, which we all should do, through the List Hub technology, the moment you put this in, that property shows up on thousands of sites.
Yeah.
There's a list that we have on our toolbox. You can see it. It's a great tool for the listing appointment to show the sellers all the sites that it's going to show up. And a lot of those are international sites. So you might want to check that out.
Yeah. Okay. And we can skip through there. Okay, so coming soon listing interval. So next slide, the current rule or the rule that was in effect last year is that you could only have a coming soon listing status once per property per brokerage. It's now within any 365-day period. So there was no reset to that listing. Now it's at least within a year's period. So ideally, if you take a one-year listing, that coming soon status, which is where you're preparing the property for full marketing, you can do that once in a listing period within a year.
And just to touch on this, I think everyone understands the coming soon, that will be seen by all the subscribers to MLS, but it will not go out to the public sites or through the IDX feed.
Correct. So MLS is not sharing the listing, but the idea is there were all these sites that were doing coming soons, but then it was on all of these public sites, but you and the MLS weren't made aware of it. And so it didn't make you guys look very professional or knowledgeable that you didn't have access. So that's why the coming soon status enables a listing to be shared with all brokers so you're aware that it's there, but it doesn't take that listing out publicly yet until, you know, renovations are completed or painting is done, or you got all the photos and you've done all the things that you want to, and now you're ready to make it ready for prime time on all of the websites. And then you change it from coming soon to full active, and then that enables it to go out to all the sites.
Suzanne, how long can a listing remain in the coming soon category?
30 days. 30 days. All right, next slide. Okay, so the changes have all now taken effect last month in January. Everything is in place. There are no fines for any of these new rules until March 1st. So this is part of our making sure everybody's aware of what the new changes are. I will say that the listing statuses, so having it be active under contract, pending, hold and canceled, we are working again with websites to make sure that they've converted those statuses, and majority of them have. But again, if you run into something that hasn't, by all means, let us know and we'll follow up with them for you. And that is a recap of all of the rules that have happened. So I'm open to answer anybody's questions together with Patrick. Courtney, you can go ahead and maybe unshare the screen for the Q&A. Anyone have questions? Yeah, so you can go ahead and switch your primary picture before sold. Make sure it's an exterior shot. And you can go ahead and switch that designation. Yes. Any other questions, Patrick? And what I will say is, you may not think of it today, but hopefully we've kind of given you some aha. And if you run into something, by all means, just reach out to MLS. Our client care team can answer any of your questions. Of course, ask Patrick. Patrick, if you have any issues, you can always reach out to me or our team, and we're here to help.